Good evening and welcome to another episode of Air It Out, live right here from North Main Street in Barrie, directly across the street from Nelson Ace Hardware at 185 North Main Street. Tonight we're sitting down with the Central Vermont Foster Parent Association. We have Kate, Aaron, and Troy joining us. They're going to talk to us all about June being reunification month and all kinds of different things that they do, they need help with, and looking forward to hearing what you guys all have to say and what you need and how the community can help you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Of course. So let's start with you, Aaron. Let's talk a little, or how about you each introduce yourself first? Let's see who each of you are and what roles you play within the association.
I'm Erin. I have been a foster parent for over 20 years, and I've been the president of CVFPA, which is the Central Vermont Foster Parent Association, since 2014.
I'm Kate, and I've been a foster parent for 2.5 years, so relatively new, and I am a member of the board.
I'm Troy West. I was a foster parent for about 7 years. We haven't done it for the past 3 or 4 years. I was a member on the board. I was also a member of the FAFA.
So you're here to explain experience.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And how about we'll go back to Aaron and you can tell us about Reunification Month and what that means and what we can do to help with that. Because I've been told that there are things that community members can do to help facilitate that as far as the needs of foster families. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is that June is Reunification Month, and the goal of foster care is to reunify with the family. And I think that it's really important for us to remember that and to celebrate this month, because I personally had a child reunify from my home just a couple weeks ago. And I know that, this is what most of us are working for and working towards, and building relationships with the families and setting up long-term supports for them as they work to get their children back in their home. So there's many ways that fostering is hard, first of all, but if we're working towards reunification, we need to set supports around the family and around the children or youth to help the family be successful. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. One of the ways that I would say is what I call body-based therapies. So most of our kids aren't really prepared for talk therapy. Talk therapy isn't really helpful for them. But what's helpful for them is to be in a gymnastics class, or go to karate or horseback riding or swim lessons, or those kinds of things where they can move their body, they can be with other kids. Troy said it earlier, it's like the discipline of being part of a team and having to stick to a task and master a skill and have the feeling of accomplishment of doing those things. It's expensive. Mm-hmm. It's expensive to do that for kids. And it's also logistically time consuming for us as parents. And many of us have multiple children in our home. And so it can be very difficult. And we need the community support to do these activities with our kids. So we need businesses who run those activities to make themselves known, first of all. Then second, maybe offer scholarships to our kids that we have. And we also could use help with transportation to those kinds of events and activities. If you have multiple kids who are doing multiple sports or activities a week,
it gets tough.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, definitely gets tough. And so when you talk about businesses that can provide you dance, karate, MMA, self-defense, there's so many different things that it could be. And you mentioned scouts even.
Yep. So scouts even pottery classes or art classes. There's a lot of things that our kids need to or could access to help them working through past experiences that they've had. And I found that for my kids, one of the best things I can give them is a feeling of control of their own body, that they're in control of how their body moves and what happens with it. And so they can become masterful of it. So gymnastics, karate, sports, swimming, any of those things, they really have a sense of accomplishment and a feeling of strength and purpose. And I think they have to master hard things, and they can do it in a supportive relationship with many of the people who've reached out to my kids in my home, become such long-term mentors to my kids.
And now, are the parents that you're trying to reunify with, are they part of this process as well?
Yeah, sometimes they can be. So I've picked up family members and brought them to, scouting events and sports events and other activities. And they might, if they're at a place in the case where they can transport themselves, maybe they can help with the transportation and taking their child to these activities and starting to build these relationships with the community members who are offering these activities.
And so, Kate, you currently have children in your home?
I do. Yes, I have a couple of foster children in my home. And actually, one of them is involved in karate right now. And just to back up what Erin had to say, their feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction as a result of that influence in their life really shines through. Just tonight, they received another stripe on their belt. And the look on their face was just, you could tell that he really felt like he had accomplished a real milestone for himself, and he had. And the sense of accomplishment and pride, a lot of these children haven't experienced that before. So like Erin said, getting involved through maybe scholarships or just making yourself known and aware in the community will have lasting effects on these children if they can partake in those supports.
Absolutely. I think that's the case with any child. So to have those supports with children that have been displaced is even more important. And I hope that lots of people will listen and help you all with that, because that's so important. Now, Troy, when you said you were a foster parent for quite some time, were you involved in that sort of program, or is this kind of new?
No, I was. Actually, we had one girl that was with us for a year. It was her second time being with us. And we brought her to an open gym at Central Vermont Gymnastics up in Waterbury. And she was 5 years old, and they watched her at open gym, and they said, we want her on pre-team.
Wow.
It was 2 nights a week, 2 hours per night, and they gave her full scholarship for that. We didn't pay anything for that. I just had to get her there and sit there for the 2 hours, 2 nights a week, which I did. We did that for a year, and they were willing to continue that scholarship after she went back home, but it just wasn't in place. We tried. I tried doing the transporting. It couldn't work out on the other end.
Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate,
but
it was there, and she was very good.
She was good.
Maybe someday she'll get back into it.
Maybe.
Yeah, she'll remember those times, and it'll be a goal of hers to do such a thing again. So that's, when we're talking about this and we're talking about transportation and in different, that's something that the community could help with also.
Absolutely, especially after they go home. I mean, her mother's biggest thing was it's gas from Barry to Waterbury, and I was willing to help her out on the transport because I had my daughter that was going as well, but it still just didn't work out in that case. But there are other cases where I think it could have.
And so if we could is it a big process to become somebody that can transport? Do you know?
So in order to do transportation when a child's in foster care, you have to complete it's the first 3 sections of the application. It's not the full process of being a foster parent. You're basically being approved as a respite provider, which gives you background checks and clearance to be with a child. And so then you can provide respite care and transportation. And so transportation may be to those activities. It might be to school, because we have a policy that says when a child is placed in foster care that they remain in the school of origin, so the school that they were in at the time of care, but their home that they moved to might be out of that district.
Yep.
So it might be transporting them to school, might be transporting them to these activities, maybe even to family time, and that is very helpful.
And I've done that as well before. There was a teenage girl that was going to school in Northfield and was placed in Barry, and I did the early morning transport for her from Barry to Northfield.
We have Michael Deering. He's a local councilman here in Barry, but he also is a coach and does the Barry youth football. And he said he knows that a lot of them would love the football. So maybe you could get some to join with him. He says foster youth are so underestimated. Yeah.
Yes.
He's a former foster youth himself, and so he knows. And Michael is a super good guy that's always reaching out, trying to do stuff for the kids in the community. So it's good to see him chiming in and telling us what he might be able to do. So it's not that hard to become somebody that can help. And I know, I mean, I have registered to work in other agencies like ARIS, and the process is not that big of a deal. You do have to go get fingerprinted, which is right in Montpelier at the Sheriff's Department. Super quick and easy, usually now, especially now that COVID's done again, so that we can actually go inside and without an appointment. But it's not difficult, and so I definitely would encourage as many people as possible. Is it volunteer?
So transportation and respite, there is a reimbursement for those. So there is a mileage for transportation, and there is a form and a process that you have to go through to submit it. And same for respite. There is a reimbursement subsidy that we call it, that you can get for reimbursement on that. And if you are, it is taxable income, and then you would need to keep track of your mileage. So I don't know if anyone's ever had that before, where you're getting reimbursed for mileage and then you have to keep track of your miles,
Right.
and report both of those in your taxes.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of paperwork and keeping track of something, but it's not a lot.
No, it's definitely not a lot. And like I said, I've done it before. I've done it with different agencies, and it's really not. And especially because almost everything now is done on the computer. If you just keep a little log yourself, it's all fairly easy to complete and do. I actually told Linda that I would love to sign up to do that, to do the transportation or help in some way. And we were going to do it last time you guys were here, and I don't know what happened. I think we got talking. That's what happened. That's what always happens.
It is what happens.
That happens with Aaron.
Yeah, we all just did. We just got talking. Now, you no longer are doing foster care, Troy.
We are still licensed.
You are still
We're
licensed.
still licensed, just in case, but no, we're not. We're currently not
Just
taking in any children.
taking a little breather.
Right.
It is a tough job.
It's very
For
tough.
sure. It's especially because of the children that are coming to you. Well, a lot of cases they're frightened. They've gone through a traumatic experience, and maybe not at that very moment. And maybe it hasn't. Maybe it's not always a traumatic situation, but they're still displaced. They're still somewhere with strangers and in a new bed and a new environment, maybe with siblings all of a sudden that they've, never had. Or, and sometimes the siblings are separated. Unfortunately, it's the way it needs to happen. And, I can't imagine how frightening that must be. And so I can't imagine how difficult it is for someone like all of you. And I mean, I give major kudos to you to opening your heart and your home to these kids and just making them feel safe. Yeah. I think it's amazing.
I have a saying that some of my best friends have come from foster care, and we didn't always sit on the same side of the table. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is something happens to you when you love the same children. You care about the families of the children. Mm-hmm. And the relationship is very difficult, and often starting especially is very difficult. I mean, somebody has determined that there was some issue and the children needed to leave, and that our home was somehow better and placed them with us. And that's very difficult. We had nothing to do with that, and that's hard to get over and to come to a place of a mutual understanding and appreciation for the children, right? We care about the kids. We want to see the children successful, and so therefore the families be successful.
Right. And you're the middle person that takes all the heat. Really, you take the heat from the parents and then the children too, that probably think, why did you take me away from my mom or my dad? And it's got to be super tough.
Right. They don't always understand. And so it takes a while sometimes to come to these relationships where that past can be in the past, and you can see the person for just someone who cares about your children and not necessarily linking us with our relationship with DCF and what they, the relationship that we have and the expectations and responsibilities that we have with them can be a compromising factor for us when we are working with families. But I think when we work towards reunification, we try really hard to be just a person and let our families be seen as just people.
And that's what the main objective is right now, is to reunify.
Yes.
And I can say that us personally, we always tried our hardest to become very friendly with the birth parents, because there's always that reunification, and we wanted to be part of the children's life after they go home. Mm-hmm. One, because we care for them. Two, but we want to make sure that they're still staying safe when they're back home.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a tough situation to be in too, because, and it's unnerving because you don't know. And how about you, Kate? You have kids now.
We have kids now, and their current goal is reunification with their family, and we have built a relationship with the biological parents. Like Troy said, we have a hope and an expectation that if reunification does occur, that we will remain in their lives. And that's really important for foster children, to see that consistency ongoing. So that's definitely our goal, to always kind of be that maybe uncle figure for them for the rest of their lives. We've had other placements where the children have been reunified, and we've been able to have a successful relationship with the biological family, taking the children maybe for a weekend or a night or maybe just an afternoon, and giving, the biological parents some time to kind of recharge themselves, because every parent needs that. So yeah, that relationship's very important. It takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of empathy as a foster parent to work through that. Because the biological parents aren't always there at the beginning, but they'll get there over time, and it's a good example for the children too.
And I'll add with that I think it takes a lot of courage for the families to accept us. Yeah. It is, it can be seen as pretty risky to allow us into their families, and especially after reunification, because there is a feeling of, I just got them back. I don't want you to
take them.
Yeah. I don't want anyone to know if I don't do a single thing right, kind of feeling. And while there may still be some checks and balances as they're starting to reintegrate into doing all the things that parents do, I hope that the relationships that were built can sustain that, and the families can stay connected, and allowing the foster families to stay connected. Because often, like you said, there are siblings that were then introduced that now they're siblings,
Right.
in some degree. And it's not changing or taking away from other siblings, but it's new relationships for that child or youth. And like Kate said, an aunt-uncle role. I have lots of kids who call me auntie. And I think that, like Troy also mentioned, that I've had parents where later down the road for various things, the kids have come back to us, not in DCF relationship, but just as a relationship between the families, that something was needed in that time. And I think that's what many of us are here for, and why we stay fostering, is that kind of long-term connection with the kids and the families. It's not really about helping DCF. It's about helping the families long-term.
Yeah. Yep. Having that relationship, I know, as someone just not in the foster care system, just in my family in general, how important my extended family was. And so to have that and have that security of somebody that you can count on is an extended family, I would think would be extremely meaningful to any child in any situation. And then in a fragile family, even at first, when I would think that when you first get back home and you're getting into the swing of things, that things would be a little awkward at first, just like they were when they went to your house. And I think that's awesome that you have that relationship, because hopefully a mom might reach out to you and say, he hasn't really slept good in the last couple of nights. Is there something different that you did, or what did you do at night? Or and try to learn from you as well. I would think that would be pretty important.
I think it is really important, but I also think it takes a lot of courage.
It does.
For that family to reach out and express vulnerability and ask for help.
And I say to those families, I wasn't even in that situation, and I still asked for help when, my kids were growing up, because I truly believe it does take a village. No matter what your situation is, it takes a village, and none of us are perfect. None of us have all of the answers. And man, if you can reach out to a friend or somebody that has children and say, my gosh, this is happening and I don't know what to do, and I've tried this and this and this and it's not working. I just think how amazing that would be. And so how about we just stop the stigma even with that? I mean, I do a podcast during the week. It's called It's No Secret, and it's all about the opioid crisis and mental health. And I think the same thing applies in this situation. Just stop the stigma. It's okay if you reach out.
Yep.
I think the families of the parents often also have a hard time accepting our relationship, because they don't understand it. They aren't close enough to understand it. I was at a birthday party for a kiddo who had been in my care, 10 years earlier. And the family said to the father, "How long are these people going to keep coming here?" And he said, "Forever.
Yeah.
They're part of our family." And so I think that's also really hard for some of the parents to have to respond to their family who don't understand the connection or the dynamic that happens between us. And it doesn't always stay the same, right? Families struggle throughout time, and our relationships struggle throughout time.
And sometimes it doesn't happen at all,
And sometimes it
as
doesn't
Troy
happen
said.
at all.
It wasn't because you didn't try; it just didn't happen in that situation. Yeah, super important though. Yeah.
And respite, we had talked quickly about respite, but respite needs that we have. We talked about school and kids having to go to schools that are outside of district. When schools are closed and people have to work, we need someone who can have those kids. Not all of our kids have childcare. Often they come to us when they aren't in a childcare or have after school. And so if we can have someone who is available during the day, you don't have to have a bed to do respite. It can just be during
with a whole lot of work. And so if you just need a little bit of break, a weekend or something for respite, is that only when they're in foster care, or does that follow when they are back with their parents?
It can follow when they're back with their parents. Years ago, we used to have a program in Vermont called Casey Family Services, and I was a foster parent through them. And one of the things that they set up was repeat respite care over long term. And I had kids that came one weekend every other month for years. And it just became a relationship. And when kids were with their parents, they just kept coming to our house. And it was just what it was.
That's what I
It was
did.
just the
I
schedule.
did. That's what I did. I did every other weekend. I would have children, the same family, but the children would come and stay the weekend with me, and I did that for a lot of years. I think 11. So
DCF isn't great about being able to set up that kind of rhythm with kids and consistent caregivers and respite providers. I think it's one of the things that we're working on is trying to set up some kind of platform that can connect families that are available to respite needs and transportation needs. So it's something that we're working on. We did set up an email account that if people wanted to reach out about businesses that have body-based therapy opportunities, or if people were interested in respite or transportation and wanted to know more information, they could reach out obviously to DCF, or they could email us at cvfpavermont@gmail.com. So CVFPA stands for Central Vermont Foster Parent Association, and then Vermont@gmail.com.
awesome.
I'd also like to say another respite need that is needed, although it shouldn't be needed, is when schools suspend kids that are in foster care. Foster parents can't just stop work because the school can't deal with a child. That happens quite frequently, especially in the Barrie school system. They need help with that. They really need help with that.
Right, and our kids and youth are sitting in the Barrie office sometimes, and we don't want them there.
And we'll see a post, from the Barrie office saying, we've got a child sitting at the office who is suspended. We need someone to come take the kid for the day. And I think usually a foster parent will step up and do it. But there are times where the kid is there all day.
Wow. Yeah, that's not good.
That can't be fun for a child.
No, not at all. So you said this, and I want to go back to this just a little bit. So the Foster Parent Association is not DCF. You are not DCF. I want people to
volunteers.
totally understand that you are people that literally, you're just taking people into your home. You're taking children into your home as a foster parent, but you are not a DCF worker.
No,
Right. That's correct.
not DCF.
Right. Totally separate.
Yes.
And so I think that is the perception, and even in some of the comments on Instagram and YouTube here, some of the comments are that you work for DCF. So, people sometimes feel that you don't try to reunify, that you want to just adopt all these kids. Can you imagine how many kids you would have if you did all that?
I've had 75 kids and 76 children that I've cared for. I definitely cannot adopt all
Right.
the kids.
I mean, it does happen. It does happen where foster families certainly adopt
Yes.
children. I one of my very good friends has adopted several children, but they don't go into that, and she's been doing it for many years, I will say. But it's not. You don't go into it with the mindset of I'm going to take all these kids and I'm going to keep them for forever. That isn't the mindset, Gary. And
It's not the mindset. It's also not the desire necessarily. I mean, we join this. We get licensed because we're looking to help where help is needed. And we understand that, signing up for that license does mean that we are here to support the families and we're here to support reunification. I've only been doing it for 2.5 years, but I've had over a dozen children in my care. We haven't adopted one. We don't have an intention of adopting one at this time. We have every intention of supporting the children and supporting the families to whatever their future looks like. And I think that that's a really sad misconception that, if you're a foster family, you're only in it to adopt. And that's so very far from reality.
We did adopt one child out of the over 20 that we had. So, and she was in care for over two years before TPR finally happened. So it does happen, but it's not the norm.
Right. And it's certainly not what anybody sets out to do. I mean, nobody wants to do that. And I will say that even in those the situations, the families are still involved. Like the children that I know, they've been adopted, but their biological parents are still involved if they can be. There are sometimes circumstances where a parent cannot be, or in the case of the opioid crisis, maybe a parent's not even any longer, with us anymore, and which is extremely sad and unfortunate. But even that doesn't mean that a child doesn't end up with a family member.
Right.
Family, it doesn't just mean the parents.
Right. So reunification is typically back to the parent that they were living with or the non-custodial parent. So, if they were with mom, for example, maybe they go to dad. So that's typically what we consider reunification, although many times kids move to kin, and kin may provide them permanence in guardianship or adoption, but that we were an interim place if we were what we call community foster, which means we were a stranger to the child when they came in. Now, I started fostering as a fictive kin, where I knew the children, but I wasn't related to them. But that can happen too, right? School teachers come forward, or neighbors or friends, other people like that. And then they might move to a grandparent or an aunt. And that happens frequently. Now, that isn't usually called reunification. So when they say numbers like 50% of the kids in foster care reunify, that does not count all of the kids that move to kin, because that's beyond the reunification number.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they don't have that. They don't talk about that number, I don't think, enough.
And they should. That's
I agree.
super important. I mean,
I agree.
if a child can be with family of any sort, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, or that's amazing. And I would consider that reunification.
Right. And
Definitely.
us being an aunt or an uncle is a relationship that's added to a family, hopefully, and not taking away from a family, hopefully, if we can get to that place. It doesn't always work that way. It's very difficult, and it takes a lot of courage on both parties.
On both
to
parties,
get to it. And for the kids too. And it is hard.
Especially because at first, we all know that at first there's probably a lot of animosity, and so it takes a little bit of time to break down that wall on either side, I would think. Yeah.
And like Kate said, we are licensed. So we're licensed to do a service through DCF, right? So that is our connection to DCF. And you had Washington County Mental Health here in May, which was Foster Care Appreciation Month.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have foster parents who are licensed to be foster care providers through Washington County.
Right.
And then that inadvertently is through DCF as well, but it's a little
different.
Separated.
Yeah. Yep.
So we are licensed to provide a service through DCF, but we are not DCF. We do not work for DCF. We are not an employee. We are considered actually a volunteer, and we are not, we have regulations that we have to follow through our license.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. Getting licensed. How do you get licensed, and what does it take? I know that home inspection is one, and they come to your home, they spend time with you, they learn your family a little bit. How about you, Kate? It hasn't been that long since you went through that.
No, it hasn't been long. We actually were licensed during the pandemic, so it was a little bit different than the normal process. But there's an application. You can reach out to DCF if you're interested in this, and they'll provide you with an application to complete. You do that. You get fingerprinted, and then there's a walkthrough of your home, and they come visit and make sure that it's a safe place. There's a checklist that they follow. I know that usually sounds super intimidating to applicants. It's not. It's okay. I actually was talking about the process with a prospective foster home earlier this week, and they were thinking about putting off their walkthrough. And after talking with us, they were like, "Oh, we thought it was some big ordeal," and it's not. They check for things like, do you have a working fire extinguisher? Do you have smoke detectors in your home? Do you have carbon monoxide detectors in your home? Do you have an evacuation plan that's posted? It's things that most of us have in our homes already. And that, it is a safe space for children to come into. And then once that's completed, you'll get a preliminary license with a requirement to complete a series of trainings within 12 months. I think it's all still online. There are some in-person trainings, but the required trainings that you must complete within the 12 months is an online course. So you can do it at your own pace. You just have to have it done within 12 months of being pre-licensed. And the trainings are super informative. It's not really like, let's test and see what you know. It's more like, let's give you some education in this space. And then after that, you become licensed. And in that time period, you can start accepting placements. We were pre-licensed, and within a week, we had our first placement. So it can be a very fast process for placement of foster children. And then once we were licensed, there's ongoing training opportunities for foster parents in different areas, maybe focusing more on trauma and treating trauma for children in foster care. There's a variety of trainings which are available, some in person and some online.
Is there a fee to do any of this?
There is no fee. No fee.
And the trainings after the online, there are 3 in-person trainings, the learning networks, that you can do after that. And we used to have an annual conference. Troy mentioned he was part of the board of VFAFA, but after the pandemic, that hasn't started back up again, so those courses are happening online.
Lots of things haven't started back up. We need to get back on the stick with those things.
It's tricky.
Even at the schools, the PTOs, things like that. All of these things that kind of fell by the wayside that we need to really get back in place and implement. It's important that we have all of that.
And like CVFPA, one of the things that we do is we have gatherings once a month for foster parents. We have gatherings once a month for adoptive parents, because there are adoptive parents that need support and there are foster parents that need support. And having people who understand is really helpful. And some of us have been doing it longer than others. And so we can share information and experiences. And it's really great. We have a very dynamic group, and that's helpful because sometimes you hit it off with some people and other times you don't hit it off with other people. And so if there's enough people, then you're always going to find someone that you can connect with.
And then let's talk about the people that you do have in the community that support you. I know, right offhand, we know that Amy's Armoire is a huge support for you all. When you first, a child's coming in and it may happen at any hour of the night. You may need a car seat, you may need clothing, you never know. And so that support is there. What are some of the other supports you have in the community?
So, Amy's is here in Barrie. We also have a clothing closet in the Wheelock building which is a resource of free clothing for foster children. We have to move because the Wheelock building has been sold, but we'll be moving to a church in Berlin. So the Congregational Church in
nice.
Berlin near
Good.
Applebee's
Good.
will be supporting us in a location. We'll be needing to figure out racking system, but if there's anyone out there who has a really good mind about organization in that way, let us know. You can email us.
Right, because you'll be setting
Exactly.
up. I'm so happy that you found a space, though. That's great news because you didn't really know at first
We
what
didn't
was going to
know.
happen.
Right.
And so that's great news.
Yeah, and then we have some really great partnerships with the Be Seat Safe folks who run the car seat voucher programs. And I know I can call my person at Waterbury Ambulance, for example, and they always get me in and get a car seat right away and get it installed for the child and safety checked. I think many of us have made relationships like that in our communities. So Troy mentioned Central Vermont Gymnastics. Green Mountain Dojo supports our kids.
Now, are they in Montpelier?
Green
The
Mountain
Green Mountain-
Dojo is in Waterbury,
They're in Waterbury.
in the Boy Scout Council building.
Oh, yep.
Yep. So they're a great support. And a lot of the, like you had someone who talked about the football.
Yes.
So a lot of the community sports, I reach out and just ask, will you offer a scholarship?
Scholarship. Yeah,
The
because there always is still things that they need, cleats and protective
you
gear,
don't get too
T-shirts.
many no's when you ask.
Mm-hmm.
You get very few no's. You get mostly yeses if you just reach out and ask.
Which is, I mean, that's great.
Because I know Valeri's would help out if needed. I just know a lot of places will help out if you just ask them.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is we aren't allowed to identify the child as a foster child. So you have to have a relationship with them as a foster parent, and you can't identify the child. There's an assumption, maybe, but we can't identify them. And so that is a little bit of a tricky scenario.
When you're trying to sign them up for things,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
because
can't
you're
identify
not
them.
mom, you're not dad.
Right.
So how do you go about all of that without? Yeah.
Well, we have an author. So years ago, foster parents didn't have any rights to do anything, and everything had to be done through the worker within DCF. And so kids maybe couldn't go on a field trip without a signature from their worker of DCF. They couldn't go on a sleepover to a friend's house without that friend's family being background checked, fingerprinted, and being approved by DCF. It's only in the recent years do we have a federal policy called prudent parenting, which has changed that for us. So now we have a policy that allows us to have normalcy for the kids in our homes. And that outlines everything that anyone could think of. Maybe there's something out there that's not listed, and whether we're allowed to do it without any further permission beyond our own, this is normal for this child, or if we need the team to approve it. So, if they want to get a job, or they want to get a license, or they want to color their hair, cut their hair, if they want to pierce their ear, if they want to, I don't know, mow the lawn. And so everything is outlined in there. And so sports and activities are now part of that, getting school pictures. I mean, really, there's a belief that if you're in foster care, you can't be in school pictures, you can't have your name published. That's not true.
Wow.
We can put their picture and their name. We just can't say, this is foster child Johnny.
Right.
We don't need to identify them in that way. That
No.
shouldn't be what they should have. Every experience that kids have.
Absolutely. I mean, it's no different in my mind. It's no different than going to school and walking through the lunch line, and you're somebody that gets a free lunch, and you don't identify those. You don't wear this badge that shows that that's who you are, and they're just a child, and let's treat them that way so that they can grow that way.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
And I think this, like kids can now go to an overnight at their friend's house without having to tell the parents, hey, he's in foster care. You're going to have to get your fingerprints done so he can come over. We just outed them. They should just be able to go there and have a normal experience. And
I didn't know that it was that way. That's super sad that it was that way, and I'm glad that has changed. I can't imagine.
I think the prudent parenting policy came in 2016 or 17.
Wow, so not even that
Not
long
very
ago.
long ago.
Not that long.
We were very backwards
Right.
for a very long time.
Exactly. So now we
Wow.
do get a letter when a child comes to your home that says you're approved to sign permission slips and to enroll them in sports and to do all of these things and to take them for medical care and so forth. So if anyone, I just put my name and say that I have permission to enroll them, and I don't really say anything else.
Wow.
I mean, childcare is really tricky because childcare has to be specialized services in order for them to take foster children. So we definitely need childcare centers who are homes that are willing to become that, to take our kids and to accept drop-ins for kids that don't have school or whatever reason
So
they can't go to
the
school.
list of needs is long. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a short list. And hopefully I mean, we can all get together, you, me, Linda, Kate, Troy. We'll all get together and see if we can come up with a list of services that you already have, services of community members that maybe you'd like to see that would maybe best fit, and then and just kind of hash some of these things out so we can create some lists and get some posts up and help out the best that we can.
I think if the community understood that, if getting our gutters cleaned was the difference between us saying we can't do this anymore and this child has to move, they would come clean the gutters. We know that people would help. It's we don't know how to communicate that to people. We also don't know how to, people don't know that this home is a foster home, and we don't necessarily know how safe that might always be. So it's a little bit tricky too to figure out how to help and how to support. So if people are willing to be background checked and cleared and then are willing to help with various things, it's not just respite and transportation. It might be things at our home because some of our children require supervision. We can't get up on a ladder and clean the gutters because we have to supervise our children. And some of the natural resources for our families, if you have grandparents who can watch kids, our kids might not be able to be watched by grandparents of our grandparents. So we need more help than you might think. And, some people might think, well, some of our family and friends might say, well, you took this upon yourself, or just send them back. Those are terrible things to tell us, because what we need is help and support. And we really are working for reunification. And yeah, we need help.
we do have quite a few comments coming in, so I hope that you'll all be able to go back and look through those and answer as much as you can. But we have Sharon writes that I am kinship provider that is struggling and don't know a lot of other parents and places to help with my child. And so I'm assuming must be she could reach out to you all.
She can. I think
The
she
Foster Parent
can reach out to us.
Association.
Sometimes we have connections for respite within our own network, right? We try to support each other. We're all very busy, and we try to support each other. When something happened today and Linda couldn't be here, I called Troy and said, hey, can you come just, an hour or two before we were here?
And sometimes it's just a list of numbers where you could contact another foster parent, even if you want to just talk for 5 minutes. Like I said, for me, sometimes I would want to call, one of my good friends and just not just on a bad day and say, as somebody who is mom to an addict, it's a lonely world sometimes. And you sometimes just want somebody to talk to for 5 minutes that understands exactly what you're talking about.
And we're controlled by confidentiality.
Right.
We can't just talk to anyone.
Right.
We can't talk to anyone.
But
And so
you
we
must
can-
be able to talk in general terms.
we
Like,
can
I'm having
talk
a
to each
really
other.
bad day.
Right.
And,
We can talk
right.
to each other.
Right.
But we can't just talk. So I
Right.
encourage people to reach out. If you are kin provider, you are part of Central Vermont Foster Parent Association. If you've adopted your kin through foster care and you live in the Barry district, which is 23 towns, it's a pretty big district.
That's a huge district.
Yeah, it's not just Washington County. It's part of Orange County. I don't exactly know all of the towns off the top of my head, but from Warren to Waterbury to Cabot to Marshfield to Washington, it's a big area, then you are part of Central Vermont Foster Parent Association, and you can email us at cvfpavermont@gmail.com, and we can be connected with you. And we will send you messages to be, joining us for our gatherings or trainings that are out there. Just talk. I talked to a foster parent at 11:30 one night this week. Things just happen, and people need connection and know that people are still here for them.
I'm just reading through the comments. Definitely a lot of them. So I hope you all go back and read through them, answer what you can. And, I understand that maybe some things you won't be able to answer, but even if it's a general answer of a website or something that might help somebody understand a little, that would be great.
Sure, we can try to do that.
All right. And
Thank
then,
you for having us.
by all means, is there anything else you want to make sure we mention? I don't, I want to make sure that you all get to say everything you want to say. And then know that you can come back anytime. You just call me and we'll just come down here and do this again.
I mean, I'll say that we were foster parents for 6 months before we found this group, and we were completely lost those first 6 months. We didn't have help from DCF. They're understaffed. We didn't have the help from them. Like Aaron says, you can't just talk to anybody about these things. We had a lot of questions, and they were finally answered when we went to our first gathering, and we were sitting with 12 other foster parents that had been doing it. I mean, there was probably 150 years of experience that first night that we sat down. If you're a foster parent or a kinship out there, you're struggling, find this group.
It's got to be a relief.
It can help. Like,
oh my gosh, they're right here at my fingertips.
So. It's a huge relief, and it's a huge asset that is definitely unknown. I share the same sentiment as Troy that, we had a period of time where we kind of knew this group was there, but we really didn't understand what it was for. But now that we have immersed ourselves in it, we've learned so much more from peer foster families and kinship families than we ever would have learned just by following the lead of DCF. And I think that's another thing that sets us apart. Again, to go back, we are not DCF. We are a group of individuals that care about, the future of these families, and we're here to support, and we're here to support each other too.
Well, I think that you're all super brave, and I, for one, am very grateful that you're a part of this community and so willing to open up your hearts and your homes and to do this, because it's not easy, and some days I'm sure it can be pretty thankless, and some days I'm sure it's very rewarding, but it's I can only imagine it's a very tough balance. And so
It's true. One day I was standing on the street of Barrie here, and someone yelled my name and ran across the street and jumped on me and hugged me, and it took me a second to figure out who they were. It was a kiddo I had a long time ago. Actually, it was one of those repeat kids for respite. And, I just always hope that even if we lose track, that we made an impact in the life of kids in the time that we had
they
them.
remember you.
And they take that with them, whether they remember us or not, because sometimes the kids are so young. And it's a unique thing of foster parents. You want them to have an impact from you, but not necessarily if they can't have a relationship with you, that they don't miss you or have that negative impact, but that we gave them something that they could take with them.
It's awesome. I mean, I think I can't say enough. I think it's wonderful what you do, and I hope that we can chat more, we can get some lists together, and we can get you all the help that you need to be supportive of this, because I can't imagine. And I can't imagine. And I know that there are many kids that don't have a place to go, that there are often, you need so many more families that you just don't have. And that's frightening, actually.
Since December, I think the numbers that I've seen is they've lost 15% of the foster homes since December. And the kids have stayed the same, and I don't know why. All the reasons are, it's really hard. It's hard to be a foster parent. It's hard to help the community understand really what our intentions are and what we want to happen and why we do this, it's tricky. And it's hard on our families logistically, and it's hard emotionally, and it's hard on other children who are in our home. And it is a hard journey. And with community supports is the only way we can keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we bantered the idea of foster care for a long time, and we really thought we envisioned this one thing, but there's so many other ways to help out. So, for those that are listening, if you want to get involved, there's a lot of ways to get involved, and we're more than willing to answer any questions that folks might have around how they can get involved and how they can help. And it can be, as simple as maybe just spending a few hours taking a kiddo to the playground to, full on foster care. But we're here to answer those questions for individuals.
Okay. Well, thank you all so very much for coming. And I just let you all know that they are going to read through the comments, try to answer what they can. I'll post up the links to how to reach you, the email. I'll get all of that stuff posted up, and hopefully we can get some other lists going and get the word out for you all and help you out as much as we can. So thanks, everyone, for coming. Tune in tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. JD will be here with Dave Sawyer with the town of Berlin. They are going to talk about local options tax, and more than likely, because it's Dave Sawyer, they'll be talking a little bit about gambling. Dave is a professional gambler, and we all know that they have just legalized sports betting in the online sports betting in the state of Vermont. And Dave has quite a bit to say about that, and I'm sure that JD will too. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.